So we don't need more friends. We literally don't have time or energy for more friends. A lot of people in OGC have kids. A lot of people in OGC have like a family to take care of. And so it's not that they need the responsibility of like entertaining more friends or making more people like them. It's that they need favors. They need favors. They need connections. They need information. They need support, and they need somewhere where they can be honest about what's going on.
Hey, Han.
Hey, Sheree. How's it going?
It's going good. You know, just looking for the sun in New York City.
Speaking of New York, we have a really amazing guest to bring on the show. She and I actually met when she invested in Trash as an angel. And we were both living in LA at the time, actually, though it was the pandemic. So we didn't actually meet each other in person until like much later. Shortly after that, she moved to New York City. And so as it goes with this country. But I want to welcome Mallory Contois to the show today. She is absolutely incredible. We're going to learn so much from her. Mallory, besides being an incredible operator, investor, advisor who's done like super badass things like being the COO at Medify and strategy lead at Cameo, was also at Compass, at Pinterest early on, and LinkedIn. She currently heads up community at Mercury, the banking company. But the really interesting thing about Mallory, besides all of this incredible stuff that she's done, is that she's also the founder of a community for women in male-dominated fields called the Old Girls Club. And that is what we are going to hear Mallory talk to us a little bit about today. And I'm so excited to hear what she has to say about building the OGC. So Mallory, tell us about the moment that things just got very real for you.
That would be it was actually over the holidays in between 2021 and 2022. I was at my parents' house in Connecticut. I'm home, and we had just raised a $25 million Series A from Tiger and 776. We had closed the day of Thanksgiving. I was exhausted. And then I finally got to take a few days off and go to my parents' house. And I'm an only child. And so every time I go to my parents' house, it's like right back into like my mom's doing my laundry. I'm not a full adult. Like I don't take any responsibility for anything. And it was sometime in that week. I don't even remember when. And I had been like drinking with my parents and just kind of telling them about my work, and neither of them are in tech. My dad is a doctor. My mom was a nurse, but really was a stay-at-home mom for most of my life. And they like marginally understand what I do, but like if somebody asks them, they, I think, send them my LinkedIn. And so
computer, something with computers.
I got enough people texting me like with zero understand or like thinking I did something totally different than I actually did because my parents told me or told them that. So I ended up just being like, just use this link. But anyway, so I've been having this conversation with them and trying to explain the fundraising process, and then being like, yeah, so we got $25 million like wired to us last week. And they were like, okay, like then what happens? And I was like, dude, I don't know. And I was like, I'm supposed to figure it out as the COO, you know, like the CEO I worked with there is amazing. He's still a very close friend of mine. And it's actually way more fun being friends with him than working for him. But, you know, we closed the round and it was like, all right, cool. Like, let's get the budget going. Let's get the 2022 strategy going. You let me know. And I went home and I was like, I am like not qualified to be doing this. Like, this is so much money. And I realized I really didn't have anybody to call, or like I was freaking out and I couldn't say that to the CEO. I couldn't be like, I don't know what to do with this. And like, who do you call at that point? And so I ended up like calling a few of the women that I had worked with in past roles who had like been either in a role like this or like around it. And like, I knew I would have some advice. And it made me feel a lot better. And it also really put a microscope on the fact that I was just like exhausted from needing this expectation that I had been sort of under for the past decade in my career as a woman in tech, that I would just like have that I would just know the answers and like be able to point us in the right direction. And so a few glasses of wine deep one night, I rage posted on LinkedIn. And so I went on LinkedIn and I said something along the lines of like, women are tired. Like, we're exhausted. This is crazy that you guys think that we know all of this. Like think of the women in your executive team, your chiefs of staff, your heads of ops, your like middle management who are women, like, when was the last time you heard them say, like, I don't know how to do that? And the reason is because we're all afraid that that will take our credibility away at work when we've already had to work so hard for it. And that is like so tiring. And so I just kind of cracked, and like I posted this long LinkedIn post, thankfully had the wherewithal to like make a type form to be like, if you feel this way, like give me your email. Like, I don't know what I was going to do with it, but
that's pretty impressive for a rage post to include a type form like that.
I'm a COO, so like
some next level like rage posting right there, Mallory.
And so I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I had like, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 comments on the post and like 200 emails on this type form, and like so many women being like, you know, supporting and whatever. And I panicked. And the reason was because I had cancer in 2015. I'm 7 years in remission now. But when I went through that process, I really developed a lot of anxiety and a lot of PTSD of people paying attention to me online. The journey of like people suddenly like noticing what I was doing because I was maybe going to die was extremely dramatic. So from 2016 to 2021, I really shared very little on the internet about my career. And I was always a behind the scenes person. That's how a generalist becomes a COO, right? You become so committed to enabling other people, but not wanting your face or your name on it, that you become really excellent as a second in command.
Truth.
So I woke up that morning and I was like, oh no, like I hate this. These people like know my name and I don't know who they are. And like, it's too much. And I called my partner, Joe, and I was like, I messed up. Like I did this thing last night and now all these people are paying attention and I have to shut it down. And he was like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, why do you have to shut it down? And I was like, because like people are paying attention to it. Like, I don't want that. I don't have time for that. Like, I have to do my job. I have to be a COO of a company that just raised $25 million. Like, I have to focus on that. And he was like, well, why can't you do both? And I was like, because this is how would I possibly do that? I'm going to let these people down. Like, who am I to do this? Like, I have like so many of these women who are supporting my post and all that. They're incredible people. Like they're so much more accomplished than I am. Like, who am I to like lead this thing? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, okay, like calm down. What's the worst case scenario if you do this? And I was like, I don't know. Like, and he was like, the worst case scenario is that people are like, that Mallory, she like tried to help, you know, like she tried to stand up for women and like, what, like just do it. And I was like, okay. And then I like just hung up and I was like, all right, fine. And so he really like, I give him a lot of credit for that, even though it was such a sort of obvious thing to him, because it made me take that first step of being like, all right, like I guess I'll just throw all these women in a Slack community and then we'll like maybe be able to feel better through some like group yelling, you know, and that's kind of how we see.
I imagined group yelling.
Group yelling. My favorite thing about the community is we have a channel that's called Yell in Caps Here, and it's almost everyone's favorite channel. And you can just go in and just yell into the Slack ether about whatever you feel like you need to yell about. And the channel is not about anyone helping or like providing solutions or anything like that. It's mostly just emoji reacts of like, girl, yes, like us too.
I love this.
And it's so therapeutic and it really like cuts down people's emotions and it's very, very helpful. So I use the channel frequently. It's very
I need to join for this channel because it's so much better than what I do, which is go on Twitter and I write out the actual tweets I want to write and then I just screenshot them and close Twitter.
That's very
I did that for boy math. Yeah. For boy math, I wrote all the boy math like things I wanted to say.
Fair, please.
I really did all of my messy boy math things about everything in my life. I just
do you have
wrote the tweet. And I do have the screenshots.
I say you print the screenshots in some like gorgeous coffee table book. And then
sorry, it was just too great. I was like, I have to comment on this. This is too good.
It's good.
So then what happened, Mallory? What happened once you got people into the Slack? Because I certainly remember this moment coming at this from the other direction, if you don't mind me interjecting. I was like, walking my dog one morning. I was like kind of hungover. It was like a Saturday morning. It was like way too bright outside, like total sunglasses and Advil. And I get this text and I'm like, oh man, this text is from Mallory and you invested in my company. So I was like, I better reply to this right away. What's going on? Mallory wants me to join a community for women. And like the thing that I found so impressive about this is that it wasn't just a community for women. Cause like, let's be honest, there are a ton of those and so many of them are bullshit and so many of them are just trying to take your money. And if someone emails me one more time about some women's retreat in some exotic location that's going to cost me $7,000 that I don't have to go like have a kumbaya with like other women, I'm going to like actually like lose my shit on LinkedIn and I will start rage posting about this. You specifically were like, oh, I'm thinking about this thing called the Old Girls Club. And it's like, it's for senior women, like people who actually have their shit together in the industry. And I was like, that is something I haven't seen yet, because so much of this is about like mentoring the next generation. And don't get me wrong, that is so important. And that's a big part of what we try to do here on the pod. But I so often feel alone because like a lot of the senior women in this industry have either left, gotten way too busy because we're all massively oversubscribed. And I don't know who to turn to for that like really hard advice. Like, hey, what do you do with that $25 million Series A, for instance? And I would like immediately like, you know, trying to pick up the dog poop and hold the leash at the same time, like texted you back like, oh my God, I am so flattered that you would think of me for this. I was like, I can't believe she's thinking of me as this person.
That's so fun to hear because it's like my experience was like, I hope she joins. Like it's, you know, like we always underestimate the respect that other people have for us, you know. But I think that so an important piece of context is probably I had been part of some of those women's communities previously, and there are women's communities out there that are specifically for senior women as well. I won't name any names, but they very much are about building a business, right? Like that company is a business. Those communities are businesses. A lot of them are about bringing you through this whole curriculum. And like, of course you would pay for this because, you know, of all this value it's going to give you. And I think they just tend to really miss the mark of like how fucking hard our lives are. Like, I think they're like, you want to accelerate, right? You want to keep accelerating. And most of us are like, no, please, no more acceleration, like deceleration. Like I need to be doing less. I need to be like, chilling the fuck out. Like I need to find other people that tell me it's okay that I'm depressed and anxious and like that I don't actually know what I'm doing, but I'm expected to know what I'm doing. And that vulnerability, I think, is what you don't find in those other communities, particularly with senior women, because our default is posturing. Our default is to show up to these things and impress each other and like try to give back and try to do all the, you know, I found myself like putting makeup on before these Zoom calls. And I was like, why am I doing that? It's so weird. And so, and it was really expensive and I had, you know, been able to, my company had paid for it at the time. And then when it came, you know, when I left that company and it came to figuring out if I wanted to invest in something like that for myself, the ROI just like obviously wasn't there for me because I am accelerating plenty. I don't like need more of that. I needed therapy. Like I didn't need friends. That's one thing. And this is something else I talk a lot about with the community is like, it's really not about making friends either. I think a lot of women's communities are very like rah women, like let's be friends, like yay, you know, like it has that vibe of like you're here to like find your people and like and I think that's a very common theme in community messaging in general, which again a lot of people do want that, but I think for me specifically the audience I was trying to reach were the women that we've got our 4 close friends that we can like tell all our shit to. We've maybe got a partner, maybe not. We've got our like, you know, whatever, 10 people in our life. But like, so we don't need more friends. We literally don't have time or energy for more friends. A lot of people in OGC have kids. A lot of people in OGC have like a family to take care of. And so it's not that they need the responsibility of like entertaining more friends or making more people like them. It's that they need favors. They need favors. They need connections. They need information. They need support. And they need somewhere where they can be honest about what's going on. And so that was sort of the like white space that I saw. And again, this was not about me building a business. It never was. It was about filling my own gap of like, this is something I don't have. And so I'm going to build this for myself. And if like other people want to hang out, that's amazing. And that's what I felt like I was really missing. Some of it probably comes from me being an only child. Like I didn't have a sibling to call. I didn't, my parents aren't in the industry. So I really felt quite on my own.
Quick question for you. I want to just key in on something you said, because I think even for myself as a community builder, it was really loud when you talked about like women don't necessarily need more friends.
Yeah.
And we don't actually need the responsibility of that. Because I'm head of community at Flybridge. And even outside of that, like I'm always building community. But there is this tension between like the need to make it kind of like it's about love and like, and it is. But I just think there is certainly, I've certainly fallen victim to the need to make it warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
As the calling card, and really what it is the need to make it warm and fluffy as the pathway to vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really curious about is, in absence of like an element of friendship or an element of potential friendship, how does that vulnerability required to ask for that favor or to say, I need advice on this thing? How are you fostering that without that sort of warm and fuzzy friendship chip, to wave?
Yeah. So I'm not a particularly warm and fuzzy person. Like it's not my personality type. And I think I get it from how I was raised. The tension you were talking about, for me, I define it as like social to tactical. When you're thinking about community dynamics of like how social versus how tactical is this community, or how social versus tactical are the exchanges that are happening within this space. And I think communities tend to by default swing social because tactical doesn't feel good, right? Tactical feels, it just doesn't feel like, it feels salesy sometimes. It feels devoid of like emotion or of humanity or things like that. And so I really wanted to challenge myself. And it was something I actually felt I was particularly well positioned to help with. I think you can be tactical while also being very human. I don't think it needs to have that social element. I've struggled with all kinds of social anxieties and ADHD and whatever else growing up. And so my social skills are like not the best, but my tactical ability to help people while still making them feel seen and heard and like that I'm interested in them has gotten me from all the way from childhood to here without, like not having any friends. And so I really tried to sort of demonstrate that could exist, because I think a lot of women in particular are not taught that that's a possibility. I think men operate that way by default. I think they're by default tactical, but like human, where they like, but their version of humanity is doing things that like are man stuff, like let's go golf or let's go whatever, but that's about doing business. Like they're there to tactically like make money together. Whereas I think women's default is like, let's have 6 rounds of drinks before I even feel comfortable asking you for help with anything. And so I don't have the like capability of doing 6 rounds of drinks before I ask somebody for something. And so I think I've unlocked the ability and like the comfort with saying like, hey, I really respect everything that you've done because of X, Y, and Z reason. I want to like, I think I could probably help you in these ways. I would love if you'd be willing to help me with this. And like, we can get to know each other as we do those things with and for each other. And so the question you asked was how I sort of like facilitate the vulnerability that's required for people to stick around and be safe and all of that. And I think a lot of it was very demonstrative at the beginning. It was a lot of me being very vulnerable and direct with the community. And it was initially about me. I did share my struggles with mental illness and with my health and with like my career and with the people I was working with. And that sort of unlocked this sort of willingness of other people to be like, all right, cool. Well, if she's doing this, like I could say something that's like maybe a step down from that. So it doesn't seem as severe and uncomfortable. And then over time, that just kind of, I really rewarded that behavior in the community where like I would really engage with those people who were showing up and making themselves uncomfortable for the sake of the group and being like, thank you so much for sharing this. Like everybody here has gone through this, I'm sure. Like, let's talk about how you got through it. And like, I would ask other people to weigh in on how they had gotten through that same thing. And so by like consistently rewarding that behavior where it's like, you don't even have to know, we could have never met. I haven't met most of the people in OGC in person, but I know a lot about their lives, and like, that's almost this, I think that the extreme end of that in communities is anonymity. You see it in chat boards, you see it in like Reddit, you see it in Discord, places like this where full anonymity, you can sort of be super, super vulnerable, but you lose the human side of it because it's just a username. And so I think that what makes it special is that you still have their names, you still have a photo, you still feel that you know them as a human, but they're also showing up in a way that is like very direct and upfront about things that we're all going through.
Yeah.
The reality is like we all go through the same shit too. It's never happened where someone has posted something in OGC and it's been like crickets, that nobody else has experienced that. That's literally just never happened, and I think seeing that over and over is something that's really comforting. Like if you go to therapy and you're one-on-one with your therapist and you're talking about the stuff that you're going through, it can feel very like I ask my therapist all the time. I'm like, am I the only one that like feels this? Like, do other patients of yours go through this? Because the one-on-one format, you can't actually see that. You have to kind of trust that they're telling you that this is normal and whatever. But when you're doing it in a group setting and there's 10 other people being like, oh my God, this happened to me last month. Like, here are the screenshots of like the advance I got on LinkedIn, or like, here's the thing that the dude said that I worked with and like, I didn't know how to interpret it. Like when you see those tangible examples, we start to realize that nothing that we're going through is that it's not about us. It's not some personal attack. It's not because we're bad at our jobs. It's not because we don't care enough. It's because it's just a common experience.
Yeah.
Healing truly does happen in community. I've become a big believer of this now. Like I'm in this amazing coaching community that I was so afraid to sign up for at first, because like everything, all of the coaching is done in community with others. And I was like, oh my God, am I really going to talk about problems that I would talk to my therapist about one-on-one with like other people listening? This is the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. But I've been in it now for like 2 years, and it's probably been like one of the most helpful things because, like you say, it's like, wow, everybody is actually going through it together, and you learn so much from listening to other people and comforting them, or just listening and not trying to provide advice or solutions or fix it or whatever. Like you say, like the shouting channel on Slack, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm here for you, girl. Like, yeah, I felt this too.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something also interesting, having been on the other side of this, about the tactical versus the social. Something I so appreciate about the OGC is that I never feel guilty about not checking it.
Yeah. Good.
And that is the way I feel about so many of my group chats, so many Telegram channels, so many Slack channels. Like shit, I even feel guilty right now about like friends that I owe a phone call to. And I feel like I constantly wake up with that weight on me, like, oh, I should call this person. I haven't talked to them in a while. How are they doing? Haven't checked in. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Listen, the backlog is real.
The backlog is real, right? And it's like,
I text my friends every Tuesday night.
There are some friends that I literally, like one friend in particular, she and I have scheduled phone calls like literally in our calendar, and it sounds so tactical, but you know what? It works for us. Like I would not talk to her.
You know how many couples schedule sex and are way happier because they do? Like, these are things that we don't want to talk about because they don't feel like the ideal version of who we should be or what we should be able to try to hold. There is only so much you can like hold in. Like I'm the same as you. If it's not in the calendar, it is not happening. And that applies to everything.
Yeah.
Like that way I can plan. I know how to like feed myself that day to make sure that I can get through the things that I need to do. Like, And by owning that and communicating that to other people, like your life gets so much easier. And I'm so glad that you don't feel guilty about not checking it, because that was always the goal.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like one of those few places that, and just like hearing you talk about it now reminds me of like, wow, I really should use it more, because there's like some things going on in my life right now that I definitely need some advice on. But like there's this, whenever I step in there, I feel like I can step in, read some things, occasionally like help someone out because they're looking for a connect and I happen to know the right person. I can make an email intro. That feels good in the moment. It's like super lightweight for me to do, like no skin off my teeth. And then, maybe write something and like dip out. And it's just this completely like lossy format where like I've now exited and I'm not thinking about it and I don't feel bad that I have unread notifications and nobody cares that I'm not there. Nobody's like trying to encourage me to post more stuff and do more things. And then next time I pop back in, it's just like the same nice, welcoming group of people sitting around and I can chat to them. And that's like, that is so rare. There are literally only two communities in my life that I truly feel that way about. And it's yours and this other coaching community that I'm a part of.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I always tell people, like, when I think about the monetary value, I felt very, very guilty about charging for OGC for a very long time. I'm like just getting to the other side of that. But what I really think the value is you're paying $10 a month or $100 a year to have this literal army of 900 women like fucking ready to go for you at any point.
Yeah.
Even if you only need them twice a year, like even if
it's worth it.
You get this heart, something goes on and you're like, fuck, I wish I had somebody to call. You got 900 of us just ready, and like, that's the value I get from it. Like I use it all the time when I'm struggling. Like I go in and I just yell. I'm like, can anybody help? And having that has just like unleashed so much confidence in me, knowing that like, if I'm not sure about something, I can go there for the confidence boost. If I'm feeling like I fucked up, I can go there and people will tell me if I fucked up or not. Like they're honest too. It's an honest community. Like people have posted and said like, hey, was I in the wrong here? And people have been like, yeah, like that was not like, yes, I would have felt the same way if you had said that to me, and that's really, really important to me too. Like the niceties we are not, I say like no performative anything here, like we are not here to perform positively, negatively, anything like that, because I'm too tired. I don't have it in me anymore. Like I can't do it.
Being nice is not being kind.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I remember also when you said you were going to charge, I was like, oh, this is great news, because like one of the things I am scared about a lot with communities, and I'm sure other people listening have the same feeling, is like, how much can I really share about what's going on at work? Because like, let's be honest, we got profiles, there's the internet, people are going to use information in different types of ways. Politics are real. Confidentiality is real. A lot of the people in there work for publicly traded companies. Like you just can't be totally honest about certain things. And there's certain stuff you just can't say. And even when you are very careful about how you say it, just so that you can get help, it can still sometimes be used against you. And that's happened to me in the past in some like really, really hurtful ways with people that I thought I could trust. And so I was really scared about the confidentiality aspect. And so I love that you can like be anonymous in there if you want to be. But when I heard you were charging, I was like, oh, this is great. Cause it's just like a little barrier of entry. I mean, come on, what's $10 a month? Like I realize money is a thing, but like that's the equivalent of like 2 coffees in a major city in the US. So like,
it's interesting. You guys are talking about this, like niceness is not kindness. I have a coach, and I found him, by subscribing to his paid newsletter. And also because he was doing this AI literacy group. And that was like really interesting to me. And he's a philosopher, like that's his actual job. He's a philosopher, which I think is really cool. So the fact that he does coaching, he like approaches it from like a completely different way. Shout out to Nitzen. I'm shouting you out on our pod. But he said something to me. He asked me, do I do things from a place of generosity, or do I do things from a place of power? And I was like, what? And so I was like, of course, generosity. Like that was like the thing I said right away. And that made sense to me because back to like warm and fuzzy is how you connect. It's how you bring vulnerability out. Like this is what I'm thinking. So I'm like, of course, everything I do is from a place of generosity. And he was like, well, generosity breeds resentment. And he was like, because you get to a place where you're so generous and maybe it's not reciprocal, or maybe you've over-indexed, or maybe you've like reached your end, or maybe it's too many people and then you burn out, or there's some part of you that develops tension and resentment. And he was like, power is not hierarchical, and power has no direction. We're not talking about force. He's like, power is like a thing inside of you that emanates and creates value. And that was like such a like, my brain like literally exploded. He was like, power allows for generosity. Power actually creates space for generosity.
Yeah.
And he talked about whether you're helping someone, supporting someone, creating space for folks to like self-actualize or get help, like doing it from a place of power allows you to create value that is then generous.
Yep.
And I thought that was like such a, like, it literally obliterated like everything about how I want to do anything in the future.
Well, so much of that, I think, too, is a very female taught thing. We are generous. We give. We have these motherly instincts. We want to take care of other people, and that's what's rewarded when you're young and when you're dating, and like you get all of this feedback that you should be generous and you should be kind and you should be caring. But the reality is that, like you said, that only goes so far, and you only have so much of that energy to give. But for me, and I think like this is kind of where you're headed with it, is that I got to a point in my career where I got lucky a few times career-wise. Like I was early at Pinterest, I was early at Cameo. I have met so many incredible and gotten the chance to work with so many incredibly talented and smart people who are also equally, well connected to amazing people. And a lot of OGC comes from a place of like me using that power in a way that is scalable and that feels good to me, right? Like, because that value is important to me, that I'm using my network for good and that I am helping others. But I literally could not possibly help 900 people one by one. And now when I have people reach out to me and say, hey, can you help me with this? Or like, can you coach me through moving, into a role like yours and whatever, I have the power now to say, I can, like my calendar is nuts for the next month, but I would rather you jump into this community of 900 women, of which like 100 of them are probably super qualified to help you here.
Wow.
And like that has become my power now, is that I can open those opportunities for other people while still protecting my own space. And it's not about me not wanting to spend that time. That's literally a better option for that person. They're going to get more perspectives. They're going to get more information than I would be able to give them one-on-one.
I love that.
Power is a dirty word.
Exactly. It's like power. You think of power as something that you're exerting over someone.
Or like I go to like power grab, like, oh,
yeah.
Like I've heard a lot of people talk about, actually, particularly women in executive leadership or management roles, of like, oh, she's doing like a power grab, or
it
she's
also has
grab.
this like kind of like bad Instagram feel to me. That's kind of like somewhere in the same like hashtag as like all the like health and skincare bullshit we get fed about like stepping into your power, and it's like, oh, fuck off.
Yep. No, that's real. Power has been a dirty word, especially for women.
Yeah.
Especially, you're not even supposed to say, like, even the idea of having power, it's either watered down or like, oh, you're like too ambitious, or you're too, you know what I mean? Like, I know people have their opinions on the Barbie movie, and we talked about it on another show.
God. Oh, I'm sad. I could go on for 7 hours about the Barbie movie.
We're going to have you back on for another episode.
Right. Just another Barbie episode 7 version. America Ferrera's speech, she talked about power. Like, you shouldn't want it. You shouldn't, you shouldn't go after it. You shouldn't. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I just really, so much of what you're saying, like, really just resonates. And I bet it resonates for our listeners as well. Yeah. A question I have for you is, you're doing this thing that's clearly growing, both in revenue and in like the stickiness of the community. And I am just curious on how you're balancing this thing that clearly started as like super meaningful and solving a problem for you. Yeah. And I bet is still very meaningful for you and is growing. And then you have this like big job that's also like community focused in like a different way. Yeah. How are you like both at like a meta level, like in yourself managing this, but also like tactically, especially for people who have things they are doing outside of their 9 to 5, like, yeah, these things are big and both going well. Like, how are you doing that?
So one thing I've like learned about myself recently while I have these conversations, the first is, I don't have children. And I'm not married. My partner is like very busy and self-sufficient. And so truly, like, I genuinely do have more time than the average 33-year-old woman does have for things like this. And I like to be very upfront about that when people are like, how are you balancing it? Like, I literally have more time than a lot of women do. And I'm grateful that, IVF exists and egg freezing exists and all of these things exist that have enabled me to take this time to dedicate to my own career and to things like that. The second thing is whenever anyone's like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, OGC is my hobby. Like that for me, because I didn't start it to be a business. I didn't start it as an intentional income stream. It's always come from a place of passion and interest. And I was a psychology major at Duke. I continue to like consider myself a student of humans, and having this like place where I feel like I'm able to study the type of human that I have like the most respect for, like women who have just fucking like crushed it in tech and VC and male dominated fields for 10 plus years. Those are the women that I meet and like want to know more about. And I feel so lucky to have such easy access to 900 of them on my computer whenever I want. And so it to me feels the same as somebody who like really deeply loves ceramics or really is like spends their free time researching modern art or, something like that. Like it has the same energy for me. And so the money is pretty irrelevant. The size of it actually is also fairly irrelevant because it's very self-sufficient. Like it scales pretty easily in terms of how I set it up on the back end. So it's actually not that much more time for me. And even if, as it does become a bit more time, it also becomes more interesting because there are more people, there are new people. Like I just had a woman apply this morning. I was like in bed looking at, because I still review every application myself. And this woman is a product manager at the White House. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to meet her. Like
that is incredible.
I have so many questions. What does that mean? Like, how do you, and I looked at her LinkedIn and she's like building, I think like she's working on government websites and things like that and like helping initiatives at the White House through like a product manager's lens. And like the fact that women like that just show up into my sphere, like, and are like, hey, I'm here to like get to know, like that is so cool. And so the balance it's not really about balance, honestly, for me. It's like, I think it's a pretty standard split time-wise and energy-wise of like, I dedicate a lot of time and energy to my day job because that's how I make money. That's how I support my lifestyle. I really respect and love my team. I want to show up for them. I care about Mercury and I want to do a really good job there. And then when I'm out of those hours, like I spend that time on OGC. I spend a lot of weekend time on it. Also working East Coast hours. I spend a lot of mornings on OGC because I work with a lot of Pacific Coast folks at Mercury. So like 8 to 10 in the morning is kind of OGC time for me. And I'm kind of a natural late worker. So I just stay with Mercury stuff till, 7 or whatever. So it's really just become a very natural balance. There's a world where, okay, if it's 10,000 people and like it's a whole fucking thing, like I obviously have to reevaluate that balance. Yeah. Probably bring people on to help me and whatever. But for now, it's good. It's fine.
I appreciate that. Sometimes it's helpful to like make it real for folks, especially when you're hearing someone speak about just doing such incredible work and like how is she doing that with this like whole job?
I mean, I cannot imagine like if I put myself in the shoes of someone who is doing a side hustle that they don't feel anything about, as a second income stream, that I personally would find really, really hard. But still have a lot of respect for the people that do it because that's their commitment to making the money that they want to fund their lifestyle and to fund their future. And like, I just don't even know if I have the wherewithal or like the commitment to do that. I got lucky in that my second income stream and the way that I make more money is something I like genuinely really love. And I think for anybody listening, like if you are thinking about doing something on the side as a second set of income, like even if it's a thing that will make a little bit less money, but you love it 5 times more than the other option, like for your own mental health, I would say like try that first, because making money from something you really, really genuinely love and like came from your own creation is very special.
Mallory, what's one of the most surprising things that has happened over the course of running the OGC? Something you didn't expect?
The lack of attention from men. I was like really afraid when I started it that it was going to come off as aggressive or critical or anti-man or something like that. And I was very, very nervous about that, especially with the name. Because again, it was like a joke, like but then it became like a brand, and I was like, oh fuck, this is kind of intense. And I was scared. I'm scared of the internet. Like, I'm scared of trolls. I'm scared of like people thinking that I have ill intent. And the reality is it's not anti-man. I love men. I date a man. He lives with me. I have a lot of men in my life and my career who have enabled me and championed me. I think there are incredible male leaders. I just want women to have the same thing as men have. They have the old boys club. We should have our version. And it's not about taking the old boys club down. Like, I actually spent a lot of my career trying to change men in leadership to think differently about things, or treat women differently, or speak using different words. And it was exhausting, and it didn't do the thing I wanted it to. Like, it never happened. I never really was able to change very many people. And so this particular thing is not about trying to change anyone. It's really just about creating an equivalent space and equivalent opportunities for women and non-binary people that men sort of by default have the luxury of belonging to. I think of it very much as a social club where men are kind of born into it, and like, we had to create it, and that's okay. Like, it's not that they shouldn't have it. It's just that we should.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's like actually a really great place for us to talk about something else that's been going on in the world.
Let's do it.
So we were chatting earlier, and we have this thing we do on the pod called the Record Scratch about like something that really made us raise our eyebrows this week. And it turns out that like Coinbase was giving away free cold brew cans on Capitol Hill that were really ingeniously designed, like something like kind of, we're thinking like Adbusters 90s kind of vibe here, where instead of having the ingredients on the back of the can, it instead had stats about how many Americans own crypto.
Yeah.
And it just made me go like, wow, this is so fresh. I haven't seen anything like this in a while. What did you think of it?
I think so. I actually, for a while, was very like, I don't even know how to weigh in on the conversations about crypto and Web3 and NFT, because I felt a lot of feelings about it.
You're not alone.
So much of there were a couple of things at play there, right? Where it was like, okay, these are clearly community-based products, and it does rely so much on the community behind them. And I found that to be really interesting. There were also some really ugly community things happening, right? Like, there were some really, really bad just dynamics happening in those communities. And that made me want to, create space between myself and those communities. And then the third was like just the obvious gender gap in those communities, as they were, we're talking, what was it, 2021, the NFT bubble, where like all of the dudes that I knew were like buying the Bored Apes and making them their profile page. And like, I remember I went in to set up my MetaMask account, my wallet, and I am like a very smart woman in tech. I have been building products for 12, 13 years, and I could not fucking figure out how to do it. And that was my moment where I was like, this isn't built for me, and if it's not built for me, it's certainly not built for the rest of America, and it's certainly not built for the rest of the world. And those are not products I'm interested in supporting or helping build. They were originally really built for a small bubble of people in tech who found a new way to make money. And so had a lot of complicated feelings about them, really didn't participate in the conversations about it for a long time because I just wasn't even sure how I felt about it. But lately, I think this Coinbase example is a really great one, where it's a company that, has like been on this wave alongside all of these other communities in crypto, Web3, NFTs, and they genuinely are, they see a trend happening. They see a lot of people that are wanting to participate in this thing, and they're trying to meet people where they are versus yelling at them. I think this example is a great one of that, where, I looked up who the CMO at Coinbase is. She came from Facebook. I think she probably has a lot of very smart consumer opinions of how to actually drive adoption amongst the average American and the average user. This feels like that to me, where it's like, hey, let's take off our like whatever ego that everybody should understand this, and let's pretend nobody understands it. And like, let's meet them where they are and help educate them on why we think that this is an amazing thing, versus criticizing them for not understanding it or blocking them out or like creating space or whatever it is. And so I actually really liked that approach.
Or like
and
litigation, right?
Yeah, I just wish we saw more of that from new tech in general, of men on the podcast being like, well, if you don't get it, like, just too bad, and more like, okay, let's learn in public. Let's like have these conversations. Let's let people ask what they think are dumb questions, because if you have them, everybody else has them. And I think this was a nice example of them showing up in a way that's relatable and kind and empathetic to the average person versus elitist or patronizing.
Yeah, I definitely had some of the same, like that was definitely my vantage point on crypto for a long time. And it really wasn't until, I would say even before 2019, the person who made me think that crypto might have something going on that like I wasn't getting in like a positive way. Not the like, it feels, the language doesn't feel built for me, but from a like, there's a promise here that is, I mean, for me, it was like about equity. It was actually Jack Dorsey. We were in Ghana, Jack Dorsey and the whole then Twitter executive team. My startup that I ran before I came into VC, we hosted their team in Ghana.
Cool.
And I remember walking with Jack in this, on like a canopy. And he was talking to me. He was like, well, the real reason I came to the continent was because of what people are doing with crypto. And he was like, I'm just super fascinated about how people like outside of this like Western ecosystem are using crypto to solve problems and to solve like actual problems. And that really planted a seed for me, even in, November 2019, because I think it was 2 weeks before our birthdays.
Yeah.
That like there's something here that is for everyone. Even if that's like not the lens that I'm seeing it in the States. And I kind of came back and the pandemic happened and I kind of still got surround sounded by crypto in a very specific way. But I held on to this nugget that like there is something that can create opportunity for everyone in this new technology. And that there's a huge opportunity to create ways for people to engage with it. And I feel the same way about AI now.
I was just going to say, it feels very similar to AI, where we've got the consumer, like whatever hypey angle happening, but the underlying tech has been around for a while and is being used in a lot of really important ways. And thing. Yeah.
I loved that for the Coinbase, like marketing activation, essentially. Like, I think, tech goes around government and regulations often, out of necessity. I was on a panel on Thursday and we were talking about like Uber's whole go-to-market was go around the regulatory authorities.
Yeah.
But I think there's something interesting about what you both were saying, like rather than like rage against it or be on your broadcast and sort of have your pithy remark about it, by like giving a cold brew, like give the cold brew to the lawmaker and the people thinking about policy and the Capitol Hill intern, and like really just educate people that like everyday people are also playing with this.
Yeah.
So rather than sidelining an industry and maybe over-regulating it, maybe our dollars need to go more towards education or being expansive. And Coinbase in and of itself as a company is doing it. So I just, one, from an execution perspective, was top tier. Han knows I have a thing for typography, and I thought the typography on the can was wonderful. And I loved the like blue moment. Like it was just from a design perspective, like beautiful, which we love. But yeah, I think similar to both of you, I just thought this is a really cool way to raise awareness about this in the most accessible way.
Yeah.
Like it being in person even was very like tactically accessible.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about the color, but it is interesting that they chose blue.
It's very partisan.
Yeah, like I was wondering, because the picture is a blue can on Twitter, but it made me wonder, were they also giving out red cans? Because like you could see how, this is a very like, we're coming to you, key opinion formers, policymakers, and regular people that like work in the White House staff, like you have a whole job, you're thinking about the government every day. You're probably not thinking about crypto all the time. And it's like, it's just a really clever one sheet. It's like, here's the stats, here's what's going on. Here's like some data for you to think about. We're not like pushing an agenda on you. It's just like,
you're tired.
And also, like, your willingness to pay for coffee in the morning is like super high, right? I mean, we were all just talking about how we will spend like upwards of $5, $8, whatever, because we need it. And so it's like, it's meeting people where they are in the morning with the thing that they want most and giving it to them in a format that can sit on their desk all day long where they can easily read off the back of the can. It's like so accessible. It did make me wonder, was it a pointed color scheme or did they go both ways?
Yeah, because you'd think that, I mean, I imagine anyone that works at the White House and on Capitol Hill is like very color coded, right? Like where they see red and they see blue and like they can't possibly help but subconsciously associate that with a point of view. So yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. I don't know the answer, but
very pro more advertising like that.
I'm a big guerrilla marketing girl. Like I always try to think of like, and we're just, I mean, you've seen the studies, I'm sure, of the ad blindness, especially in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and like they just don't even see ads anymore. Like they're, I don't know if you've seen the eye tracking studies that they've done, but they literally don't look at banner ads. Like their eyes never meet the banner ad because they're so trained on where they appear on pages. And they're like so keyed into like what is content marketing, what is like sponsored content, all of that just like doesn't work anymore. And so, I'm a big fan. I hope that we see a like resurgence of creative marketing campaigns. Me
too. Being like a design student in the 90s when we were like all obsessed with everything coming out of like Adbusters and CalArts and like all this kind of stuff, I was like, there was just this moment where like design was doing some really beautiful things with marketing. And then somewhere along the line, it just became so watered down to like online advertising, basically just being like click driven, super simple calls to action. It's just really, it's really basic. It's like, buy this thing, subscribe here. It's like, that's not clever marketing. That's just like shoving it in my face. Like, give me something to think about.
I need foreplay. Please, like in my marketing.
It was with the rise of data, right? Like the more we were able to track return on ad spend and ROI and things like that, like the harder it became to justify in the executive room spending on brand campaigns, spending on out of home. It's actually, I'll plug Mercury here. I think that the Mercury team does an incredible job of making the case for that internally and committing to stuff like that. Like we just did a TV commercial that's starting to air now. I won't spoil it, but it is like really well produced. It's focused on our founders, but like super top of funnel. Like there is no ROAS calculation happening here. This is pure, like, let's make people think about banking in a different way. And like, probably not able to measure the impact of it, but we as a company believe that this is important. And it's been cool to be back in that environment after being in, especially like at Pinterest, we were an ad business. And so it was all cost per acquisition. It was all click-through, all engagement rates. And it's nice to have a little bit of the magic back of like, let's just make something really beautiful. And let's make people feel something. And I think I'm a creative at heart. So I like to see and feel that too.
I love that, Mallory. That is like a perfect note to end this show on. You have done so much to create beautiful, wonderful things in this world. And we're so grateful for it. And I hope everyone listening goes to sign up for the OGC because it is the dopest space.
I will be doing it.
Thank you so much, you guys. This was so fun. It was so good to see you again after so long.
Thank you so much, Mallory. It's been so good to have you on the pod. Like, I love the conversation, your perspective, and just sharing your journey in like a way that our listeners can connect to. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. It's been so fun this season, just like having other voices on the pod, and I hope you're enjoying it. If you want to connect with Mallory or keep up with what she's doing, you can go to her website, MalloryContois.com. That's MalloryContois. She's also at Mallory Contois on all her socials. And if you are thinking about joining the Old Girls Club and you want to apply, make sure you visit jointheogc.com and tell her we sent you. You never know. You might get bumped to the top of the list. Can't make any promises, but just mention Got Real Pod. And if you're loving the vibes this season, make sure you also share or shout us out or ask us a question or a comment on the socials at Got Real Pod. Double tap on YouTube since now you can see our faces. And of course, listen to wherever you're streaming your podcasts.
Thank you so much. We'll see you back soon with another show.